Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here, and I'm going to talk to you today about air travel with a firearm. I get a lot of questions from friends and coworkers on how you do this. It's one of the things you have to do it right, and there's some very strict procedures you have to follow. And if you do it right, it's actually very easy and very streamlined, but it's important to know the rules and explicitly follow the rules. So one important note I'll make here is I'm not a lawyer and I don't work for the TSA or any of the agencies that might be mentioned. It's very critical that you follow the law. So you're going to want to check the TSA's website, and make sure you interpret and understand the rules, as well as the airlines and the localities that you may find yourself in. So this video is simply going to be a guide to the types of things you want to look for, the types of things you need to find out and understand, as well as some of the equipment that will help with the process. But please make sure you double check for yourself the individual airlines and the TSA and the local restrictions. If you have a concealed weapons license, and it's not necessary to have a concealed weapons license to travel with a firearm, but generally the people that are going to travel with a firearm do have a concealed weapons license, and they intend to carry for self-defense at their destination location. So we'll start out with the first thing is you want to make sure that anywhere that you're going to be with the firearm, including places that you may end up with in possession of it and don't plan to, that it's legal for you to possess it. And if you're going to carry concealed, make sure that your state has a reciprocity agreement. And that's one of the things that may affect your flight choices. Don't connect through New York City, Kennedy Airport, LaGuardia if you're going to be transporting a firearm, because especially pistols, they're illegal in New York City. And you may be thinking, well, I'm just going to be stopping there as part of a connecting flight, I'm never going to get my baggage. Well, if something goes wrong and your flights get disrupted and you end up having to rebook onto a different airline or a different flight, you may unintentionally become in possession of your baggage. Once you're in possession of your baggage, you're in possession of that firearm, you're now into that area where you might have some trouble. So as a general rule, I make sure I only connect through states where my concealed carry license would be valid and that it would be legal for me to possess the firearm. That way, if something goes sideways and I end up, having to do something where I'm in possession of the firearm, I don't have to worry about that part of it. So let's start talking about the equipment you need. The basic rule simply specifies that the firearm must be in a hard-cased, lockable container. So if you look at this one happens to be a Pelican 1170. There's others on the market that are approvable. It snaps shut, and then you can put a padlock through each of the holes and lock it. Now this case is very rigid. If once the locks are in place, even if I flip up the levers, I can't open this or access it in any way. And that is one of the requirements. The firearm and anything contained inside the case has to be completely inaccessible while locked. Now some of the manufacturer's cases will come with a little locking hole on it, and technically they meet the letter of the law. But if you get a particularly zealous TSA agent that grabs the other side of the case and pries it open and can stick his finger in there and touch the firearm, he can disqualify the case. Worst or best case scenario, if something like that happens, you're going to miss your flight. You're not going to be able to travel with your firearm. Worst case scenario, if you've already gotten partway through the flight and something like that happens, they might consider that you are already in violation of the law at that point, and that could have fairly unpleasant consequences. So don't skimp on the case. Don't try to just get away with using the manufacturer's case because it happens to have a little eyelet for a lock, or buying the least expensive case you can get. This particular case in this size is only about $50. And these locks, and I'll put links to the case, the locks, and any of the accessories that I talk about in the video description. But these locks aren't very expensive, and they fit perfectly in here. The other key to it is it has to be lockable. So it's a very good idea to buy these locks in like a 4-pack and put the extras locks in your checked bag. Because if for some reason they cut the locks off, then you now can't lock the case. If you can't lock the case, you can't travel with it. So having the spares allows you to recover from that situation if, for whatever reason, they cut the locks off. Which is another important point about the locks. Don't use the TSA approved locks, because the requirement specifies that only you can have the key. on the TSA proof locks, other TSA agents, there's a master key. So they don't qualify for this. It has to be locks that only you possess the key. And don't cheat on that either. If you're traveling with somebody who also is going to transport a firearm, or even if they're not, make sure you are the only one that has the key to your case, and they are the only one that has the key to their case. That is one of the primary requirements of the law. And I simply put it on my car key ring. So it's easily accessible. It's with me at all times. And even if I were to travel in a taxi, I'd throw my car keys in my pocket and I have access to the key. And this stays on my person. The locks lock it. I'm the only one with the key. I'm compliant. If the locks are cut off for some reason, then I have replacements to put on so I can stay compliant and finish my trip. Inside the case, the requirements state that the firearm has to be secured. These Pelican cases with what they call pick and pull foam, these little squares, you can pull them out and tear them loose to make the foam various different sizes. The firearm has to be secured, can't be flopping around in there. You can have spare magazines. In this case, I've got a folding knife. You can have things like that in the case, but you should only have firearm or ammo related things in the case. This isn't a place to put jewelry and other accessories. This is all things that are related to the firearm and weaponry. The other requirement is that the ammo has got to be secured. The definition of secured is a little bit vague. It simply says that the rounds have to be secured and not touching each other. It does recommend that they're in a manufacturer's carton, and that is a very good recommendation. So in this case, I've just got a Zombie Max box, and the Zombie Max box has a little plastic tray in it, and this is manufacturer's container. It doesn't have to be the exact manufacturer's container that made the ammo that happens to be in it, but it meets all the requirements. It keeps them separate, and it is a manufacturer's case. And this is one of the things too you got to be considering. You're dealing with potentially local governments, you're dealing with TSA, and you're dealing with airlines. You could be dealing with people in the case of the airlines that aren't firearm savvy, and they're going to put their own spin and interpretation on this. You want it to be very, very clear that you've met the compliance. It's in a manufacturer's case. It's a securely locking container. The firearm is secured. And I've got this particular one is set up for carrying a Glock 42. So I've got an unloaded Glock 42. And it's set up to store one empty magazine in it, and it just sits right down in there. And that's one of the other important things. The firearm has to be unloaded, and there cannot be any ammo, and when I say unloaded, there cannot be any ammo in the firearm at all. Not just chamber, the magazine has to be empty. So one of the things you'll want to do is you'll want to get into a routine. As you're packing your firearm up, get into a routine of a process you follow to make sure that this firearm is unloaded. The airport check-in counter is not the time to find out that your firearm has got a round in it. That will make your day go very, very poorly. So one of the things I do is I always cycle it, check it, and then on a Glock, pull the trigger. Because on a Glock, if the trigger is back, then there can't be a functional chambered round with the trigger back in a Glock just the way the Glock happens to work. Not all firearms are that way, but Glock happens to be. Put the firearm in the case, secure it, lock it, put it in your luggage. The next step is critical. You have to declare this. Don't try to just throw it in your luggage and hope that nobody notices. You absolutely have to declare it. They will find it with the various, post 9/11, we can thank the terrorists for this. Everything is scanned. They'll pick up the firearm. If it's not declared, that's a felony. So how do you declare it? That's one of the important things to avoid, mass chaos. You go up to the check-in counter. You can't use the gate or the bag check at the curbside. You have to go to the counter. You go to the counter, you put your bag on the scale. Don't worry about the firearm yet. Just set your bag on the scale. Give them your identification and whatever else you've got, your boarding pass, and get through the process of them confirming you are who you say you are and you belong on this flight. At that point, simply state that this bag contains an unloaded firearm. That statement is innocuous. It's not going to raise alarm. Simply saying, hey, I got a gun is probably not a good way to start your day at the airport. But if you just tell them this bag contains an unloaded firearm, they should follow the process from there. What they're going to do at that point is they're going to have you fill out a card that certifies it's unloaded. It will vary from airport to airport whether they want to look at it. Sometimes they'll ask you to open the box, just they'll see the case and that's all they want. They stick the card in there. Other times they'll actually ask you to open the case. And I did have one case where a airline employee asked me to show clear, which I did, and then she didn't know what to do from that point because she wasn't familiar with what show clear meant. It was just something she'd heard her husband say. But just follow their process. And throughout the whole thing, don't touch the firearm unless they ask you to. Just let them tell you what to do. Once you've gone through the process and declared it, you've got the card in it, you'll zip your luggage back up. It varies from airport to airport whether they will escort you to TSA and scan your bag at that point, whether they'll just point in the direction of TSA and tell you to take it over there, or whether they'll throw it on the slide and let it go through the scanners. It's a good idea to remain in the bag check area, luggage area, until you're sure your bag's probably been checked. Now, if you've been escorted to TSA or you've taken it to TSA, they'll give you a thumbs up and you walk on your way. Some of the airports have the scanners behind the counter. Just stand there and wait until they've run your bag through the machine. And if it's one of the airports where they just throw it on the bag and let it go out back, just hang for 10 minutes. If they have some sort of an issue, they're going to want to open the case. You want to be able to be paged readily, be right there, provide the key, and open the case. The other thing you want to make sure of is don't give the key to anybody other than a TSA agent. So if the clerk for the airline asks you for the key, just kindly inform them that according to the law you have to retain in possession of the key and you're the only one that can have possession of the key. Now if a TSA agent asks for it, now we're getting into a gray area whether they should or not, but give it to them. Don't argue with the TSA. If they want the key, give them the key. Once you've gone through that process, your bag's been scanned. If they had any question about the proper storage of the firearm, they'll summon you and you'll deal with the issue. At that point, get on your plane and enjoy your flight. When you get to your destination airport, the case will be in your checked bag. The only thing I do at that point is, I know the case itself is locked. I'll unzip the bag, reach in there, grab a hold of the case, and just feel that the case is there, and I'll feel the locks and make sure it's still locked. That way, if I had reason to believe it had been tampered with, the case was missing, or the locks were not in place, then I could take it and initiate the claim process. But don't get the gun out while you're at the baggage claim. That's something to do once you've left the airport terminal. Most states have requirements that you can't handle a weapon or load a weapon or carry a loaded weapon into the airport terminal. So confirm that it's in your bag and leave with it. To that point, you can load it up and do what you want to do. The only other thing you'll find that's convenient about the Pelican cases is, take the gun out and the knife, is the foam comes in 3 parts on these Pelican cases. You have the top part here, which embeds into the lid, and then you have a 2-piece foam assembly that consists of a bottom plate. It's about a half-inch thick, and then the pick and pull foam. And the pick and pull foam is 2 tiers. So there's, if you, kind of hard to show this on camera, but it's set up where you can peel these things off and you can separate them halfway through. Well, what you can do is you can buy additional pick and pull kits. And what I did with these is they're 2 separate pieces, the middle piece, and they come together when you buy them, but they're loose. And what I did is, after I configured this for my firearm, I used some rubber cement, actually some awning repair cement, and I glued the bottom piece to the top piece. That does 2 things. One, it makes it kind of a unit. And the other thing, it gives some rigidity to the pick and pull part, makes it a little more durable. Just make sure the glue has completely set. The other thing I did is I took the foam that had been picked out for the firearm, I tried to pull it out in one piece, and then I cut it in half and inserted it back down in there, so that when the firearm was in there, it didn't go all the way to the bottom and flop around. It sat flush, so that then the top part would push down on it, and I can very confidently claim that this firearm is secured. It's not going to flop around in there. But the advantage to doing this is you buy the additional kits, and I've got another one here that I can drop in, drop my ammo in, and this one is configured for Glock 26. This particular one is configured for a Glock 26 with a laser, and it fits right in there. Now this one, because of the Glock 26 is bigger than the 42, I didn't have room for my knife, but I've got all the basic components. Then I got another one. Pop out, pop in. And this particular one is configured for a car. Now the magazine fits down in here, and a little car P380. So you can see that it's very easy to configure this if you've got multiple handguns. This particular one also, there was room for my knife. So my knife goes up in there, and then the ammo would go in there. Now of course, if I were going to carry the Glock 26, which is a 9mm, this box would contain 9mm ammo. And if I'm going to carry the car or the Glock 42, it'd be 380. But it's a very flexible solution, and with these additional drop-in kits, I'm not having to reconfigure and mess around with it. One case, multiple containers. Overall, I found that once I did it the first time was a little bit stressful. You know, there's procedures you have to follow, and you haven't done it before. Once you've done it, and you've traveled a little bit, it's actually quite easy to have your defense weapon available to you at your destination. Traveling with the airlines, most airlines don't charge any additional fees. You have to declare it. There are ammo limitations. They'll only allow you X amount of ammo, and it varies from airline to airline. My thought on ammo is, this is defense ammo. I'm going to keep defense ammo in here to load this weapon with defense ammo when I arrive at my destination. If I were going to take it to the range, I would buy the ammo local. You are allowed to transport in your checked bag up to anywhere from 5 to 11 pounds of ammo depending on the airline, but now you're getting into how you're going to make sure that that ammo is secure, a much bigger case. It's easier to just buy that when you get there. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you like the video, please like, share, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I'll answer your questions in the comments. Thank you.